All right, so I am your host, Mercy Rose. I am the Head of Energy Research and Innovation at Mercy for E4I. Again, thank you for taking the time to join this webinar. It's the third and final installation of the webinars that we have been running through ENACT. The first one focused a lot more on showcasing some case studies of other service providers or other stakeholders within Sub-Saharan Africa that have delivered energy access solutions in urban informal settlements. In the second webinar, we spotlighted public-private partnerships to enable clean cooking access, particularly in the urban space. And this final webinar will be looking at one of the most pivotal topics around the role of financing in enabling private sector-led interventions in low-resource urban communities. So for more information about ENACT, you can get these webinar recordings and other resources on the webinar website, whose link is just down below. We will definitely share these with you after the webinar. Next, please. So a little bit about what we want to explore today. We would like to first of all showcase and appreciate the role of private sector financing in advancing clean cooking interventions. We are focusing on urban informal settlements, given ENACT has since 2020 done a lot in forging private and public partnerships and building an enabling environment to allow for market-led solutions as far as clean cooking is concerned in urban informal settlements. We will also, through our speakers and expert panelists, explore some innovative strategies towards improving access to clean cooking and focus much more on the barriers or addressing the barriers that we're starting to see in the urban space. We will also showcase some successful cases of clean cooking initiatives that have worked in ENACT, and I'm really glad to see some of our case studies speakers who will showcase their experiences and their journey so far, and as we try to deliberate on the vision for improving clean cooking access in the urban space. And then finally, we hope that this will be a platform for all of you to get to know each other a little bit, and that we are able to facilitate some networking among stakeholders, so you can also share your own experiences and lessons, and also provide inputs into how we continue scaling access to clean cooking in the urban space. And in order to do this, we have organized the webinar into two main sessions. The first one provides some bit of background and sets the scene into what ENACT is about for those who are not familiar with it. And then the second session, we hear a little bit firsthand from key experts in the clean cooking industry about challenges, opportunities for financing market-led clean cooking solutions in Sub-Saharan Africa. All right, next, please. So a bit of housekeeping just before we get started. We encourage you all to keep your mics muted just so that we can minimize some of the background distractions, and to give it an opportunity for everyone to listen into what we have to say and our speakers. We also ask that you keep your cameras off unless you are speaking. And we also ask that you use the Q&A function for asking questions and leaving comments, as this is the function that will be monitored the most. We want to make sure that we capture all your comments, all your questions, all your inputs throughout this webinar. So as much as possible, try and use the Q&A function. All right. Okay, on to the first session. So I will walk you through a bit of an introduction into the what ENACT is about. I will then speak briefly about why we're focusing on financing the private sector and focus much more on the potential effects that the of private sector financing has based on our own experiences over the years that we have implemented ENACT. And then finally, towards the end of the session, we will have a much more engaging conversation with the different speakers who are our project partners and with whom we have walked this journey, and they will share their experiences, including their direction of travel in terms of improving clean cooking in urban communities. And I hope by the end of this, you will have picked up a lot of lessons and identified some of those not only cross-cutting issues that the private sector experiences in the urban space as compared to the rural space, but then also some of those unique challenges that are usually they usually face when addressing clean cooking access, especially for the low resource communities in sub-Saharan Africa and in the urban space. So next, please. So a little bit about ENACT, and just down below, if you have access to your phone, there is a QR code there that allows you to access the website and all the resources that it contains so far. So next, please, Ben. So ENACT is a project funded by the FCDO, and under the Transforming Energy Access program or portfolio, we have been implementing ENACT since 2020. It is a partnership between ICLEI Africa that is leading the implementation, and Energy for Impact, an energy platform within Mercy Corps that is offering the technical support to private companies and supporting local delivery. We are implementing in Kampala. The project cities are Kampala in Uganda and Freetown in Sierra Leone, specifically within the Kisenyi communities in Kampala, and Susan's Bay community in Freetown. We have over the years brought together different partners within the project, ranging from the public sector to the private sector and the community. And on the public sector, I'm happy to have that we have representation from the Freetown City Council and from the Ministry of Energy in Sierra Leone, as well as the Kampala Capital City Authority and the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in Uganda. And with the private sectors, and you will get to hear a little bit more from the companies themselves, we have partnered with Africa's SL Limited, the Wana Energy Solutions, as well as Green Bio Energy. And on the community level, we have from time to time, engaged Kodosapa and Act Together, who have a very strong local presence in urban informal settlements within our project locations. Next, please. So I will not go into everything here, but this is really a bit of a picture of some of the key features that ENACT has been focusing on since 2020. And on the higher side, as far as the private sector engagement is concerned, we have focused more on improving access to clean cooking in informal settlements, specifically in Susan's Bay, Kisenyi, and their environs. We have focused on delivering grant support to de-risk market entry for private companies that have shown interest and have shown potential for scale in these locations. We have supported the companies through technical assistance to scale up their business models and see how these could be applied into other low resourced urban communities. And while doing that, we've collected data and evidence to inform policy discussions, as well as demonstrate the viability of some of these solutions. And then on the public sector end, we have built the capacities of local and national governments as far as energy is concerned, particularly focusing on data collection and using this data for planning. We have also established sustainable partnerships between the public sector and the private sector in delivering clean cooking solutions. We have fostered collaborations between different levels of government, both vertically and horizontally, and by horizontally we mean between departments within specific ministries and the local government, and of course vertically from between local and national government. We have also, again, as mentioned, collected the data and used our information and experiences to inform policy development. And finally, at the community level, we have raised quite some bit of awareness. We have raised or created awareness around clean cooking and sensitized end users, as well as the community at large, which has led to improved livelihoods from the use of the clean cooking solutions, has created quite a number of sustainable local jobs on the ground, and we have witnessed social inclusion from some of those segments that have traditionally been left out of development projects and clean cooking interventions. Next, please. So how are we doing this? We are implementing through three main work packages. The first one being capacity building to local governments. The second one being engaging the private sector, working very closely with the service providers of clean cooking interventions in the communities, and then leveraging all this experience to put together knowledge products that would inform further skill and replication across Sub-Saharan Africa. And this is one of the knowledge outputs in the project, and we're hoping that whatever lessons we carry forward from here can also be applied in your day-to-day work as we all continue promoting clean cooking in Sub-Saharan Africa. Next, please. Okay, so to give you a bit of a background into the kinds of communities that we are working with and why this is it's important for us to think about access to clean cooking in urban informal settlements. So we conducted a baseline assessment in 2022, just as we were about to start implementation on the ground in one of the communities called Susan's Bay in Freetown. And this is just a bit of a snapshot of the status quo of cooking in Susan's Bay as at the time. Of course, things have improved significantly thanks to our partner Africas on the ground, and of course, other stakeholders that have advocated for clean cooking. But just to give you a bit of a snapshot as what we would expect in a typical urban settlement, majority continue to rely on biomass energy. And the most common cooking fuel, as we would expect, would be charcoal and firewood, and most predominantly charcoal. And of course, the technologies are aligned to using charcoal. But as you can see from here, most of the households and most of the people, all the community members in these informal settlements continue to rely on not just traditional forms of cooking or fuels for cooking, but also what we would call dirty technologies that are inefficient and lead to quite some bit of household air pollution and carbon emissions. Next, please. And while we were conducting the baseline survey, these are some of the high-level barriers that the communities mentioned to adopting clean cooking solutions within Susan's Bay. And over time, as we have continued implementing in ENACT, these seem to also be very common across other environs of Susan's Bay. These are lack of information about the clean cooking solutions, where to get them, how to use them, and just to build, which speaks to a lack of confidence in accessing the clean cooking solutions. There's poor access as well. At the time of the study, there were no supply points for clean cooking solutions, be it LPG or otherwise. Affordability was also quite a big issue at the time. There were issues about usability, again, because community members were not very confident about using clean cooking solutions. There was this mentality that some of these solutions might be dangerous just because, for example, LPG might be dangerous just because they haven't used it before. And there was some cultural resistance, especially in terms of whether there were concerns as to whether the cooking solution would affect their cooking culture. Next, please. When we go to Kisenyi, and now we're coming back into East Africa now and into Kampala, the situation is sort of similar, but the difference, of course, in Kampala is that owing to quite a lot of work done at national level, people are cooking with electricity, but of course the forms of the forms of technology there's still a lot that needs to be done there, just to ensure that we think about efficient technology such as modern energy cooking solutions. And but of course charcoal still remains a very big one. And just like with Susan's Bay, people keep majority of the households and entrepreneurs cook outdoors, and about 3/4 of them cook once a day. So it is important that some of the solutions that we offer on the ground speak to their already ongoing cooking culture, and to make sure that they're easily accepted. Next, please, Ben. As you can see, some of the key barriers tend to be a bit similar to what we've seen with Susan's Bay. One additional concern around clean cooking here was safety concerns. So majority of the community that we looked at last year mentioned that they are concerned about using some of these technologies as they think that they are dangerous to use. They are also quite concerned about not just the cost of the clean cooking stoves, but also the ongoing costs of the fuel. There's limited access to financing, and availability is also an issue. And this also speaks to access locally. So at the time of the feasibility study, there weren't any supply points for fuels as well as the clean cooking technologies in the community. Now, as you look at that data, it kind of speaks to the fact that this is evident. It's evident that there is a gap and there is an opportunity to improve access to clean cooking in the urban spaces. I know there's a lot of focus on rural spaces, and as we start thinking about strategy building and planning at national level, we should also consider the urban poor who might be left behind if we are going to meet our SDG targets. Now, because this webinar is focusing more on financing the private sector, given that ENACT has at the heart of it supported private companies to deliver and to demonstrate the viability of rolling out market-led solutions in the urban space. We just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of why this is important, what we have started to see as the initial effects of private sector financing in the urban space. So one of the successes we have witnessed is the fostering of partnership, not just with the public sector and the private sector, but also across board with other enablers such as financing partners, such as the local community, such as the academia, for example, in delivering the solutions. And this the funding from ENACT has allowed the private companies to foster these partnerships, something that they wouldn't have done on their own. Another thing we have seen is the nurturing of innovations, from delivering innovative last mile delivery models to thinking about how to address end user affordability, to promoting productive uses of energy. So for example, using cooking for income generation and enabling that to happen in the communities. And of course, leveraging the digital services for data management and customer management. Ben, please. And then, of course, another thing we've started to see is much more on-ground partnerships with the communities. So it's not just about marketing and selling products, but we have seen the private companies start to raise awareness and sensitize the community, not just about their products, but also about the importance of clean cooking in their lives. This has also enabled much more engagement with the community members, particularly those who have a lot of influence, who hold a lot of influence in the community through committees to enable planning and implementation of some of these solutions. And of course, we have seen an increase in ownership, in community ownership, as far as the cooking solutions are concerned. And then, of course, final and very, very important is evidence building. When we started ENACT, very little was known about the energy access or clean cooking access status quo in the urban spaces. Even the private companies themselves did not understand what exists, what doesn't exist, and whether their business will be viable on the ground. And the funding enabled through ENACT has allowed them to conduct feasibility studies, carry out some action research to test certain innovations, to build monitoring and evaluation tools that they can then go on to use for business development and growth, and just continue documenting best practices that would inform strategy, their growth strategy moving forward. So there's quite some bit that financing through private sector can do, but of course all of this needs to come from somewhere, and it needs to be developed or designed in a specific way. And we will get to hear a little bit more about that as we continue with the webinar. Next, please. All right, so enough about ENACT and enough about what we are doing. I think we can now proceed into hearing a little bit more from the project partners themselves and what they have experienced so far throughout this project. It has been quite an interesting and exciting journey to walk with all of them, and this is obviously an opportunity for them to really showcase the work that we have done. I would like, next please, Ben. So with us to start us off in this session are Mr. Sahid Swaid, Dr. Emmy Wasira, Mr. Salu Kanu, and Engineer Herbert Abigaba. And Mr. Sahid is the General Manager for Africa's SL Limited. And Africa's has for over a decade spearheaded the growth of Africa's operations in Sierra Leone. And now Africa's is one of the two major LPG suppliers in Sierra Leone, and its operations continue to expand into other countries in the Mano River regions. Dr. Emmy is the CEO of Wana Energy Solutions. He is a medical doctor and holds a diverse academic background in the health sector, having studied in Uganda, in the UK, the US, and the Netherlands. He has a lot of expertise in the field of traditional fuels and their effects on women, and has made significant inputs and has been a key stakeholder and champion in Uganda. For example, he served as a chairperson for the Uganda Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association. So I can just recap a little bit about Dr. Emmy Wasira. And he, as I had mentioned, he was a chairperson for the Uganda Liquefied Petroleum Gas Association, and he led a lot of work around research, policy advocacy, and acted as a liaison between the government and the industry players. He is also a member of the Standards Committee on LPG at the Uganda National Bureau of Standards. So you can imagine doing all this, and on top of this, he is also a medical doctor and very, very versed in the health sector. So quite a number of hats on him, and also being quite a pillar as far as clean cooking is concerned in Uganda. Our third speaker is Mr. Salu Kanu. He is a senior project lead for clean cooking programs at Freetown City Council, and he's working closely with the C40 Cities co-chair. And he has a lot of experience working with government leadership and has a deep understanding of climate governance. What is very exciting about Mr. Salu is that he is passionate about advancing youth-led community actions in urban areas. He has successfully led and implemented multiple projects by high-level organizations such as the World Bank, FCDO, the UN Habitat, EU, the Bosch Foundation, and of course the Bloomberg Philanthropies. And he has a lot of experience spanning from water to energy transition to COVID-19 response, urban farming, waste management, and of course, tree tracking and trading, and a lot on the carbon financing space. And he has, over the years, built quite a strong partnership with government, private sector, youth groups, civil service organization, among others. So welcome, Salu. And of course, finally, we have Engineer Herbert Abigaba, who is the Principal Energy Officer for renewable energy in the Renewable Energy Department of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in Uganda. And Engineer Herbert has been such a key focal person in ENACT and has been a very strong advocate for our work in Kampala. He has made invaluable contributions into the ENACT project, ensuring that our interventions align with the national and sub-national clean cooking strategies. Thank you to you all, and welcome to this discussion. To get us started, we will start with West Africa and go straight to Sahid. Sahid, the Africas Limited has been a leader in importation, storage, and distribution of LPG in Sierra Leone. And of course, we know that Africas has a social and environmental commitment to make LPG available even to the low resource communities across sub-Saharan Africa. And what better place to start that than in Freetown, the heart of your operations? So my first question to you, Sahid, is how have you had to deviate from your usual business models to deliver clean cooking solutions in urban informal settlements? Over to you, Sahid.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you, Mercy, for the introduction. For ENACT, I think they gave us access to research funding that allowed us to basically find technical experts to get targeted targets, within the communities. Some of the key focal points is we had to do a lot of sensitization within these communities, even though the perception is that the affordability was going to be an issue. So for that, I think one of the key things that ENACT helped us with was being able to fund experts to do a lot of research and identify key players within these communities. And some of those results basically showed that within these communities you have, for example, cookery sellers who are commercial cookery sellers. So we were able to, identify targeted packages for them. MFIs have been very helpful. So within that community also, having access to MFIs and some community-based organizations has been very, very crucial in trying to tap into that market. Otherwise, this is not something we would have been able to do under our normal operations.
Great, thank you. Sorry, I was trying to locate my my speaker. And tell us a little bit about some of the innovations that you have had to conduct beyond the business as usual. I mean, specifically having to identify, a technical partner for project management, a few of your outreach activities, and specifically how you've enabled certain, you've addressed affordability, such as through, any shared cooking models. Over to you, Sahid.
Well, again, thanks to Africa, who were the research partners and sometimes the implementing partners as well within a lot of the program. We were able to identify a shared model in terms of cooking. So rather than, for example, digitizing what you might find in East Africa as pay as you go, we were able to create a shared model whereby it's a manual model. People will invest in the cylinder and then rent it out, and then weigh the cylinder at the beginning and at the end. So it's a manual way of selling gas by kilo to the users. We also, like you mentioned, because people are cooking outdoors, there's a lot of, and Susan's Bay is a bay, so it's by the sea. There's a lot of wind, and that was a problem in the beginning. So we had to create. You might see in the picture, we had to create a windbreakers, basically just a windshield for the cooking to go along. We also, designed the cookery cellar model, which is a bigger model with a more industrial size cookery, so that they can cook bigger amounts, bigger quantities of food at the same time. In terms of the outreach, we had to do a lot of sensitization because, as you mentioned, there's the perception that gas can be dangerous. But some of the sensitization we did, we asked people to use the product, and just by using the product, that sense, we were able to convince them very, very clearly of the comfort zone that they can have. Of course, we provided a lot of safety training as well in the process. So yeah, these are some of the things we've had to put together as we went along.
Great, thank you so much for that, Sahid. I will get back to you shortly with the next question. But as you all can see, Africa's had to do much more than just simply marketing on the ground, and had to really go on the ground to support, to carry out a lot of community engagement, a lot of awareness raising, and a lot of customer engagement work. So the next up is Dr. Emmy. I will also ask you to respond to the same question regarding WANA and what you have done on the ground. Of course, we know that WANA Solutions is a leading distributor and marketer of clean cooking energy solutions in Uganda. And WANA has pioneered LPG cooking solutions and electric pressure cooking in their portfolio, and has worked a lot in the urban spaces. I think what is very interesting for me to note here is that WANA has redefined the clean cooking delivery narrative by, first of all, forging partnerships with other private sector actors in the clean cooking space, but also really expanding the market reach and promoting what we refer to as clean stacking among the communities. So, Dr. Emmy, the same question applies to you. How have you and Green Bioenergy had to deviate from your usual business models to deliver clean cooking solutions in urban informal settlements? Over to you, Dr. Emmy.
Well, thank you so much, Mercy. Just like as you said, of course, partnerships have been so important to us. When we first of all entered in this market, first of all, we were a little bit skeptical about the people whom we're going to deliver the products to because of their social setup as well as their income levels. But along the way, we realized that things were not moving the same way how they were supposed to move if we're selling in upmarket upmarkets. So we realized at the end that why can't we offer these communities to pay in small payments? We didn't have technology which could help us to track them, most especially when it comes to improved cook stoves. So what we did, we worked hand in hand with the local communities and allowed them to pay in small installments. For example, to pay in the same way they pay for their usual cooking. If they were using charcoal with the usual traditional charcoal stoves. And yeah, that one was a game changer to us, that we enabled people to pay 2,000 shillings on a day or 1,000. And it worked. So we gave people the stove and the briquettes. And that one, I can't even explain myself, but the uptake was so enormous. We also had to improve a little bit on our delivery systems, whereby, of course, still, we don't ask clients, of course, in early days, we could not allow ask them to pay a little bit more amount of money towards the fuels, that is the briquettes. So what we did was that we could give them 5 kilos of briquette, which could be spent over a period of 10 days. And of course, we could enable them to pay within that period of time, 10 days, for the amount of money which for the amount of money we have charged for their briquettes. And that one was also, I think, a game changer. That yes, even right now we have seen that clients have started to come by themselves to pay for what we have charged them, of course, with the help of the community as well. So we have set up three hubs in the area where we have been working, and it has been so enormous in the way how we have been reaching our clients. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. So as we have heard from Dr. Emmy, there was WANA Solutions had to change their approach to the delivery and to addressing affordability by offering flexible payment options to the customers. And this even went down to making small daily installments for the clean cooking solutions. And I think what something that Dr. Emmy has also mentioned here is that we witnessed other customers coming back to access or to purchase a second product and a third product, just because the flexible payments were working really well for them. So thank you so much, Dr. Emmy, for that. I'll go back to you, Sahid, and this time is just to talk a little bit about some of the areas that you have noticed or have experienced that require a little bit more support when it comes to scaling your work and what you're doing in informal settlements. So can you speak a little bit about and give, assuming obviously that you're going to stay in the urban spaces and your intention is to scale into other communities, but can you tell us a little bit about some of the gaps that you still feel companies such as Africa's require as far as scaling is concerned? Over to you, Sahid.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think one of the key factors is the affordability issue, and that can be sorted out with microfinance institutions. I think finding the right microfinance partner has been a bit of a challenge due to the bureaucracy that each one has within their systems. But I believe once we find that out, we should be able to tap into that market very, very strongly. The other thing is, like I mentioned to you, the shared model systems that we've identified has been something which we're trying to promote as well, in a way that would give multiple factors. So it basically provides revenue for those who are trying to sell the product, and it brings the affordability issue, gives a solution to the affordability issue for those buying it in smaller bits. Now, in terms of support, really, I think the information that is generated, so some of the, for example, the M&E capacity that is provided by the ENACT project has been very crucial in us making the links to identify some of these things in a better way. I think I mean, again, if it wasn't for this, as a business just trying to look for the fastest return on investment, we would be looking at different targets in the market if it wasn't for the ENACT funding. So I believe the information generated from this is actually crucial to go forward.
Perfect, thank you. And maybe just staying on you for just a bit, as a follow-up, could you tell us a little bit more about the kind of support you would require from the enabling environment that will make it easier and maybe even make it quicker to scale on the ground? Over to you, Saeed.
In terms of support, so there's in terms of, for example, the FCC support that we're getting, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly. The fact that one of the challenges we found in these communities, for example, is that the landlords don't allow people to use gas because of the perception of danger. So some of the support we would need from the authorities is to also use that information to sensitize them as well. In terms of the general support we need, I think the projects like this give us the added advantage of learning, of funding the learning environment, the learning of moving forward in such if you like, tighter markets. And so the digitization of the information, like I mentioned, the M&E capacity building is something which I think will help us a lot in identifying trends and seeing exactly where some of this information leads to.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Saeed. And of course, I'm sure through our other conversations that a few other areas have also come up, for example, improving the tax policy just to help with a better enabling background against which you can scale and you can implement and you can deliver locally. But thank you so much for that. For that input. So over to you, Dr. Emmy, to also answer the same question regarding some of the support that you are seeing that Warner Energy Solutions and also Green Bioenergy would require to enable scaling, especially in urban informal settlements.
Yeah, thank you. One is about access to funding. Just like as Said said, I think without ENACT funds, probably wouldn't have tested some of the innovations which we put outside here in the market. For example, which I spoke about, micro payments. We wouldn't know that people like those ones in Kenya would be able to be good candidates to do that. Also, we wouldn't have tested our own idea of bundling of the product, where we tested that if a client gets two sources of energy, gas and a briquette, or briquette with the EPC or EPC with the gas, the client is most likely to save. And we have seen it happen here in the Kenya area, that customers who are having these products are able to save. So there is a need to have access, additional funding, so that we can test, so now scale up this product, which we have been piloting on, like, for example, micropayments, bundling of the product would be something which we could be able continue putting in the market and see how other people can access to it from either other resettlement areas, settlement areas like those ones which look like Senye, or test with the people in rural Uganda, and we see how the uptake can be. There's a need also, of course, to have more investment in the innovation. We have seen, just like as Said said, there's a need to test mobile and digital platforms. We have LPG, where people can pay in microforms. There's a need to scale up this, because we have seen that if people in Kenya area can pay for ICS as well as briquettes in small amounts, I think they can also be able to pay using the smart gas metering systems, and also with EPCs as well. These are areas where we think that there is a need for investment. Definitely, this can be in terms of grants, because I think high investment capital, like from debt, either equity, might be a little bit expensive to test that. There's also a need for us to continue advocating for policy and regulatory framework. We have been in the Kenya area whereby people freely, of course, they still think that charcoal is cheaper than other forms of cooking, and they freely use their charcoal wherever they get it from. Of course, we have a very good policy framework here in Uganda, but of course, I think one of the things probably Engineer Albert will talk about is enforcement. I've spoken about enforcement time and again since I've been in this space, that yes, the government has one of the best policies south of the Sahara on environment, but when it comes to enforcement, there's a challenge there. So we would wish to hear more about this when it comes to Engineer Herbert or other people, how this can be enforced in areas like this and even outside. There's a need for us to talk about things like standardization as well as certification on the products which are accessible by the clients. Here in the Kenya area, as soon as we brought in our stoves, they improved the cook stoves on the market. Now we've been here for 5 months, and you can imagine in the last month, we have seen of course, other people in these areas who are selling the same product, which is like theirs, like the one which we have been selling on the market, or the one which we are selling on the market. Now, how to enforce this, I don't know. Of course, we shall, or we still continue advocating that there's a need to have strong regulations or a regulatory framework which can try to deter people from just, yes, Xeroxing the same product. Of course, we don't know how the emission levels of these stoves which they are putting on the market, but of course, that one remains one of the challenges, but there is a need, and we shall continue advocating for having a standardization and certification of the products which are on the market. We still have gaps in skills development, as well as community education and awareness. We have done enormous amount of work in this area, but of course, I usually talk to people and tell them about Pepsi and Coca-Cola, or recently MTN, the mobile distributor here in Uganda. You can appreciate that these people here have a market. Like, for example, MTN has about 20 million customers who use their network, but you can appreciate that they still create awareness on a daily. Newspapers, electronic newspapers, they are on billboards, they are on Facebook, they are on TV, they are on radio. So there's a need for us, I think, also to continue doing that. If we as private companies, if we can't do that, we still advocate and request that probably there's a need for the government to buy airtime. There's a need, either development partners or the government to buy airtime and continuously sensitize the population about clean cooking solutions, like those ones we have already put on the market. So there's also a need for enhanced distribution and logistics. Yes, you may appreciate that when we came to Kisenyi, very few people knew about EPC, and they have been around for the last 2 years. People knew little about LPG. People knew little about improved cook stove. Okay, so being around, addressing people's solutions, there's a need for us to do that. And in order for us to do that, there is a need for us to access to cheap capital. We are not saying it's free money, but again, there's a need for us to access to cheap capital, which can enable us to reach as many people as we can, so that in case there are things like, for example, the stove fails or the fuels, charcoal, the briquettes fail to light, they are able to come back and inquire rather than putting them aside and flipping back to their the usual energy which they are using. So I think there is a need for us to continue doing that in this space. Thank you.
Mercy, you're muted, Mercy.
Apologies. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmy, and maybe ladies and gentlemen, as some bit of a quick background into what Warner Energy Solutions is doing is they have partnered with Green Bioenergy to deliver a multi-fueled approach to clean cooking, to deliver multiple fuels and technologies in the communities. These are LPG, electric pressure cookers, and improved clean cook stoves using biomass. And thank you so much, Dr. Emmy, for elaborating that, and Sahid as well for sharing the support needed. So now we'll move on to naturally to the next part of this session, where we talk to the public sector partners themselves to get their views and their as well as their experiences so far with the ENACT project, and what both national and local governments are doing in the background to just really create an enabling environment that allows a good market growth. We will get started with Mr. Salou. And Mr. Salou, I think the Freetown city has made quite some significant progress over the years as far as climate action is concerned. You just last year, the Freetown City Council published or launched the very first climate action plan. And in that, clean cooking is quite a priority. And of course, we are aware of a lot of the work that the Freetown City Council is doing to promote and prioritize clean cooking as a climate action strategy in Freetown. So to you, Salou, could you maybe give us a little bit of an overview of some of your experiences within some of the Freetown City Council's experiences in promoting clean cooking in the city, as well as some strategies that the local government, community leaders, and grassroots organizations can be involved in to effectively promote clean cooking.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, and good morning to all viewers as well. I'm very, very sorry because the connection from our end is very, very poor. All these few days, I think because of rains or the telecommunications also having challenge or repairing also. But you can bear me if you guys are having some challenge on the connectivity as time goes on. I really appreciate you guys for selecting me to be on this panel, and specifically to throw light on how local government or stakeholders can collaborate or effectively involve in clean cooking initiative, specifically in financing and implementation process. I will start by saying clean cooking is an essential intervention, and it comes along with a lot of challenges like public health and environmental deforestation within the municipality. So in this session, I will expand on how local government leaders and organizations or private sectors can collaborate in terms of financing and implementation of clean cooking, looking at some of the various challenges, we've been facing as a local government body in terms of limited resources. I will say most of the challenge as a local entity we do have in terms of implementing clean cooking initiative is the lack of budget and capacity. So looking at some of these dynamics, as local governments, we are thinking about collaboration, which is very, very paramount. Looking at what we learned in the implementation of the current ENACT project at Susan's Bay, the perfect collaboration within various stakeholders yield dividend and also bring out some amount of, implementation achievements at the end of the day. As a council, we are actually looking forward at the initial stage to see how best the collaboration will be seamless, and with various partners like the community stakeholders wherein the project was implemented, and also bringing out the best choice of using AfriGas, which is actually like a household in the municipality, impacts positively in the implementation of the project. And there are also other challenges when you're looking at, financing or collaboration in terms of implementing clean cooking intervention, which are lack of awareness and coordination barrier. So on an overall, before moving forward, I think that's why I started by highlighting, the challenges we are having as a local entity and which measures we need to incorporate in future implementation process. So I will then move into the financial mechanism for local programs. Like I stated earlier on before scaling up clean cooking intervention in various city or informal settlement in various city, I will say as local governments, we need to look out for grants and subsidies. How? Government and donor funded programs to provide clean cooking fuel are really, really challenging. So I think as local government, we need to work with the national government in terms of how we can provide subsidies on various interested party or various private sector that wanted to collaborate in terms of rolling out clean cooking or clean cooking fuel in various locations. There is also another aspect I will say that is very, very important. Since as a government institution, the challenges are like resources, you understand, looking at the budgetary allocation to various devolving function. We can also do microfinance schemes, wherein I think that one is actually one of the best practice we learned from the ENACT project at Susan's Bay, wherein we collaborate with micro grant organization in country who can actually give platform to informal settlers that, okay, for instance, you want to implement or you want to utilize AfriGas, but you do not have fund. And also the local government, Freetown City Council, cannot say they will be responsible to roll out or let's say deploy all LPG in the informal settlement. But we'll give you this platform wherein you guys can develop something like cooperative, wherein you subsidize, on a monthly basis or depending on your cooking activities, what you can be used for a specific period of time. So I quite believe collaborating with microfinance institution is very, very paramount because they are looking at how the model will look like. And they also look at a collaborative aspect of wherein you have a solid private sector that can also provide the equipment to roll out in that specific settlement. So I quite believe collaboration with microfinance is also a very, very paramount financial mechanism that we can use in terms of rolling out these programs in our local settlement. And the public-private partnership is also a very, very critical one, since we as a municipality do not have the financial means or do not have sometimes the resources to trigger some of these activities in our various informal settlement. I think collaborating with the private sector, like those running this LPG companies can collaborate with us to roll out. But I'm very, very concerned because most of the time when we talk about LPG, I'm very, very concerned because I've always reiterating this in most of our engagement. Looking at the way forward, we actually looking at in terms of reducing emission. I think we should be thinking beyond only LPG. Freetown City in 2021 or so engaged with FCDO funding to develop a fecal sludge plant in Freetown. So for us, from the local perspective, or let's say our residents, most times it's very, very challenging for it's like a stigma. So that's where also we need the collaboration, wherein people see sludge as something that you should not be very close to. But if you know if residents are aware or have the awareness or have the education that no, there is way you can treat your sludge and convert it into energy of cooking fuel source, then that specific stigma will actually, bring in a collaborative effort wherein specific stakeholders in the community will say, okay, before we are using charcoal and firewood, and we travel to like provinces or remote areas to have charcoal and firewood. But since now there is a treatment plant in the municipality wherein you can convert this sludge into briquettes for cooking fuel, why can't we collaborate with the local government that is actually owning this particular structure or this particular asset to move or scale up the using of briquettes? So for me, specifically from a local government perspective, I think we should also collaborate with residents, private sector in terms of scaling up briquettes or home biogas for cooking, for clean cooking intervention in the municipality. So
thank you so much, Salu. I'm conscious that we are almost out of time. So could I ask you to speak a little bit about collaboration? You have 1 minute, just expounding a little bit about that emphasis on collaboration and what is needed. Over to you.
So like I mentioned earlier on, collaboration is very, very critical in all this. But also, it's also very, very important for us as a nation or as a city to have the policies that can drive that collaborative effort. So I think the private sectors, let's say business people, are very, very keen in this process. The national, the willingness and intentional effort by the national government to develop, policies that will trigger collaboration is very, very important. Also, the significant involvement of community leaders is also very, very important, because they are the one driving the intervention in their community. They are the one that actually can give confidence to residents to utilize some of these cooking fuels. So that's one, it's very, very important. And I think it's something we should leverage on going forward.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Salou, for this valuable insights into what FCC is doing, as well as what you see as that needs to be done in terms of collaborating to grow the sector. And I'm really glad that you were able to also spotlight the work that the Freetown City Council is doing to convert waste into energy for cooking. We had the privilege to visit one of the plants, of the biogas plants that is spearheading this work in Freetown. So hopefully, as we move forward, we will aim to scale and bring on board more private companies that are offering diversified products in the space. And finally, to close this session, and before we move on to the next, the Q&A is Engineer Herbert Abigaba. I like to say we are, saving the best for last. And Engineer, I think we have witnessed the scales at which the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development has made as far as integrating clean cooking in the national energy plans is concerned. And of course, it's culminated into the recently published or launched energy transition plan. There's a lot of work also happening to integrate clean cooking in national electrification interventions or projects, and of course, so much more in the space. And just to say, Uganda is one of the trailblazers in sub-Saharan Africa in demonstrating the need for a national level clean cooking strategy and plan. So a question to you, Engineer Herbert, is could you give us some few examples of regulatory strategies and public sector finance mechanisms that the government of Uganda has put in place to support the uptake of clean cooking solutions? And just a little bit about the impact that these have had on the SMEs and the private companies. Over to you, Engineer.
Hello, can you hear me, Mercy?
Perfectly, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here. I start by sending regards to all the other partners on the call and those in the audience, but particularly to Sahid. Very glad to see you, to see you here. And I do remember your great hospitality. That said, I wanted to also
thank you very much,
congratulate. You're most welcome.
Apologies, Engineer. We're losing you a bit.
Can you hear me? I'm very sorry about that.
Not a problem. This is much better. It's better now. Thank you.
Okay, let me try to keep that position. Thank you very much. I will try to be quick to responding to your question. And if time allows, I had taken 1 or 2 points from your very good preamble and the submission by Dr. Emmy that I could then slightly touch on. Back to your question, I think I will answer it in 3 parts. So it's threefold. One is the regulatory strategies that we have been putting in place as a government to advance on this great agenda of clean cooking. The second aspect is obviously the public sector financing mechanisms that we have been thinking about. And then I'll touch on the impact we are seeing with those. So first and foremost is the issue of the broad, and I'm glad that you touched on a number of those. You talked about the energy transition plan. You talked about our recently updated energy policy. But broadly, we have a national framework that then recognizes and articulates these interventions that are aimed at supporting adoption, more or less to your earlier point really on fostering the right enabling environment for then the private sector to sort of operate. The second point related to that is as a government, we are working on clarity through a national clean cooking strategy, which we think is very vital in guiding government and our partners in terms of action. So following that integrated approach, we've seen the example we've taken in delivering clean cooking alternatives in the Chisenyi area. We've taken that integrated approach, appreciating the realization that our typical kitchen is actually, I think the people, the experts in this space call it stacking. People normally want to have a fallback, a plan C, plan B, or plan A for cooking, because cooking is actually, I think, next to life. I always think people who said water is life, maybe we need to coin a slogan that adds clean cooking to this. But beyond that national integrated strategy, we also have in place a number of fuel or technology specific strategies, again, for the sole purpose of giving us clarity. And maybe that relates to the point you talked about, Marcy, in terms of the work that has come out of ENACT, in terms of building that evidence. What I think is very important for this assignment for clean cooking is the role of understanding the what, and then the where. Where are you? What are you supposed to do? I think that's why the strategy becomes important. The third point perhaps to add is the role of having the right structures. I'll give an example. The ministry, again, learning from countries like Sierra Leone, countries like Ghana, it has increasingly been flagged as one of the best practices. We are setting up a dedicated clean cooking delivery unit, which will, among other things, improve this enabling environment, particularly in terms of coordination, but also knowledge management. Again, building, I think, some of the lessons we picked from ENACT. And we continue also in the same regard in terms of coordinating and setting the right environment for the ecosystem to work with the private sector. We think the private sector is a key driver. This has been demonstrated, I think, under this project. So we continue supporting the private sector to lead, because they're actually the people on the ground in terms of delivering against our target. Lastly, in terms of the regulation or regulatory framework, we think it's important to have standards, to have enforceable standards that then guard against quality and the other aspect, I think, that a number of speakers have talked about in terms of quality, rather safety. Safety is a paramount issue for this industry, which touches many aspects. So we think having the right framework in terms of standardization is important. And then obviously we continue to support the lower tier firms in terms of product testing and standardization. To the second part of the question, allow me highlight that the government, through the Ministry of Energy and the other line ministries, particularly the Ministry of Finance, has been focusing on solving some of these barriers, like we've heard from the presentation from the private sector. And so we are putting in place, we continue setting tax exemptions. These incentives we think are important in driving the other underlying barriers. So right now in Uganda, we have exemptions on if someone is importing their stoves, for instance. If you want to assemble stoves in Uganda, you can bring in input materials at zero tax. We have zero tax on biogas digesters, for instance. We have zero tax on ethanol. We have removed VAT on LPG. We think these are very important in supporting both investment, but also availability of these alternatives. We have a unique intervention where we have set an electricity cooking tariff that we think is important in terms of supporting the middle class. to adopt e-cooking as an alternative. We have a financing facility that is targeting institutions. Again, for the sole purpose, we look at our strategy, speaking to the strategy, we have segmented our approach in terms of looking at the commercial. So commercial, we have SMEs, businesses like restaurants that do the cooking. For commercial gain, we have the households, we have institutions. So we have a number of facilities dedicated for those different segments. And we think it's important intervention to solve the issue of financing. Lastly, in this regard, I will speak about the role of carbon financing. We continue to work on finalizing our regulations for climate change mechanisms that we think are important in terms of supporting access to this important financing. Lastly, to your question, Mercy, on the impact, I think our overall goal from the policy point of view is really to reduce these barriers in the ecosystem. High on this agenda is obviously the points that the speakers before me have talked about, the issue of awareness, issue of availability, issue of affordability, what we call the triple constraint, I think, to energy access. This we think is very important, and so we continue having targeted interventions that have then helped us to see market development and adoption. Right now, we are at about 20% clean cooking adoption. We remain confident of achieving the access targets that we have, both in the short term and the long term. But also importantly, these interventions have also helped us to see both what I would call quantitative but also qualitative leap by the private sector. As you have seen this particular program, I think when we did put out the advert, we had a response from over 10 very competent firms from the private sector who I think would have also delivered. Obviously, One and Bioenergy were the successful ones, but I think we've developed that portfolio. I know some work remains, but today in Uganda, we have quite a vibrant private sector that is supported through the sector association or the subsector association called the Uganda National Alliance for Clean Cooking. I will leave it there in terms of questions. Happy to take additional to supplement. If I have a minute or two, Mercy, I could also touch some of the notes I had shared, or I don't know if I need to come back. Over.
Thank you so much, Engineer Herbert. Hopefully towards the end, we might, if we have some bit more time, we can also come back to you to touch a little bit more on what else that the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development is doing in the clean cooking space. But I think you have aptly summarized a lot of the work that the private companies can leverage as far as the enabling framework is concerned to deliver scalable solutions. And I'm glad that the national government is not just looking at support to SMEs, but also focusing on how to support end users and address the pertinent issue of affordability. Thank you very much, Engineer Herbert. So in the interest of time, we will move on to the next session, which is years of experience in investment, from investment banking and all the way to private sector investment in this sector. And he holds a Master's of Science in Finance and a Bachelor's degree in International Business, Finance Economics from the University of Manchester in the UK, and he works from Johannesburg. Welcome, Simba. And next is Andreas, who will give us a little bit about himself. But Andreas works as a sales manager within BetterBest, a crowdfunding platform that has a very impressive portfolio of lending to clean cooking companies. We also have with us Miss Davinia Kogan, and Davinia is not only an access to finance lead for the Global Distributors Collective, but is also a program manager at Mercy for Energy for Impact. She has over a decade of experience working at the nexus of finance innovation and startup financing, particularly in East Africa, and has a track record working with startups, investors, and other funders to develop blended finance solutions to accelerate energy access and financial inclusion. So she has previously held positions in investment management at ING Australia, and now has moved into social impact investment and is making quite some great impact in this space. And finally, we have with us Dr. John Leary, who is holding, just like with Dr. Emmy, quite a number of hats. He is a senior researcher with the Modern Energy Cooking Services program, as well as a co-director of GAMOS East Africa and a board member at the Clean Cooking Association of Kenya. Dr. Leary has done quite some bit of fundamental work in Kenya through supporting Kenya's modern energy cooking transition by coordinating national stakeholders and connecting Kenya into the international clean cooking agenda. And this also includes supporting the Ministry of Energy to develop the national clean cooking transition and e-cooking strategies, and working very closely with the local utility, Kenya Power, to scale up some programs that support clean cooking with electricity, such as the Pigana Power program, which is quite, very fundamental in scaling or promoting electric cooking. So thank you all for joining. We will start with Andreas Gans. I know that BetterVest has a very good portfolio and has set up a crowdfunding platform that allows clean cooking companies to access debt financing to support scale and to support innovations on the ground. So my question to you, Andreas, is how have you structured the private sector financing to ensure sustainability and scalability of clean cooking initiatives in low-income communities? Over to you, Andreas.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be part here. I'm working as a sales manager for BetterVest, and coming back to your question, how are we focusing our services? There is one point which I would like to mention, that our main mission is here for BetterVest, that we are one institution which is clearly with a mission to provide clean energy, and this is our focus, and that's why we are having financial support, financial programs which are aimed on clean energy projects, especially for SMEs, and it's also aimed at certain branches. We have some special branches for clean energy with certain promotions. And with this regard, we are having, especially for clean cooking, but also for biogas sector, we have a special program which is running since last year and also this year. This is a joint program done here with the RVO, and this allows us that we can provide that we could provide loans to companies in this area of clean cooking, but also biogas sector at very good conditions. That means the interest rate is lower than compared to our normal conditions, and this is what we are doing. And we know that the conditions or the circumstances in the clean cooking sector and also in the biogas sector, they are a bit different, and sometimes it is a bit more difficult to meet the expectations or to meet the requirements for a loan, and that's why we made this very program. Our approach is here, we are reaching out to associations like Clean Cooking associations in, for example, in Uganda, but also in Kenya. We are introducing ourselves, and we are asking for organizing webinars with the member organizations, with the member companies, and we are also asking for organizing joint workshops where we can get in direct contact with the member companies and to find out what are their real needs, to get a certain understanding what we have to do to meet the expectations of these companies, and based on this exchange, we are also reaching then out on single level. That means we are going in direct contact with those companies and talk with these very companies about their special conditions. How is the company structured, and in which way we can helping them. This is on company individual level. We are there on I level and find out what kind of loans we can give and in which way these company could accept our loans. And then we have to look at the questions about the loan size, about the period, but also to talk about securities. Securities is sometimes a very difficult topic, but we are, at least from my point of view, we as Belarus, we are quite flexible when it comes to securities. We are very open to find a certain way. It shouldn't be the main problem. But I noticed at the first glance, many companies ask us how to get the loan secures. And by talking with them one time, two time, or three times, we find then a certain way. Yeah. This is the first answer to my question.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Andreas. And this actually brings me very naturally to the second question around requirements. So as you have mentioned, BetterVest is set up so that there is flexibility for the companies as far as the requirements are concerned and the terms of the loan is concerned. But tell us a little bit about the bare minimums. What do companies need to have in place to be able to access or to increase their chances of getting a loan through BetterVest? And Ben, if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. As you can see here on the slide deck, once we are, our headquarters is in Germany. We don't have special branches in other countries. And with this background, but this has, on the one hand, it is a good note, because we don't spend too much money for those kind of offices. But on the other hand, it's sometimes a bit difficult because we are not on face-to-face level with a potential customer. That's why we are trusting here on documents. And one basic document are the audited financial reports, because this is a third-party statement of a company which we don't know, and we are trusting these auditors. They are, and that's why the financial report, which is audited, is one of our keystones for making a check, because we would like to see how good is a company in the market. We would like to work with companies who have some kind of market experience, and at least for 3 years. And this is what we can see with the audited financial report. And we also can see how good they are in the market. When we look at the profit and loss statement, we can see what they are doing and how good they are. And we can also see the revenues. The revenue is also one key indicator to find out what could be the maximum loan here, because one of our rules is here that the revenue that the loan shouldn't be higher than the revenue of the last year. These are the one of the key information which we need to make our first check. And then we also need to have a business plan. We have to have a financial forecast, a business model, so to speak, but also we look at the company presentation and talk with the customer about the loan and the use and the period of the loan. With this information, we are going back, we are doing some kind of due diligence, and then we are coming back to the customer and ask, in most cases, for some more information. And with this more information, we can make another check. But to be honest, it's not so easy. The share of let's imagine of 100 companies who apply for a loan, only few companies made it to meet the requirements. That is just a fair point, which I would like to mention here, just for expectation management. We need this information as it is here. We are doing our assessment and talking with the customer about the company, about the future outlook, and then we are coming
Fantastic.
closer. Okay.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Andreas, for that. And maybe just to mention to the audience that WANA Solutions has been a recipient of a Better Best loan. This is also to demonstrate that this is possible in our space and in the clean cooking space. So you can also reach out to Dr. Emmy and Andreas separately to just understand the process and the requirements. Thank you so much, Dr. Emmy. Andreas.
Thank you very much.
And moving on to the next speaker is Davinia. I think, Davinia, you have done quite some bit of work, extensive work as far as access to finance is concerned, moving from traditional financing into more innovative financing solutions. And you have done that by supporting both investors and the private companies. So my first question to you, Davinia, is what key areas of support do you see clean cooking companies requiring for their businesses to grow? And this could span between financial support and the technical support that comes with that. Over to you, Davinia.
Yeah, sure. So my job is essentially, I work with about 200 companies at the Global Distributors Collective, and my job is to help them try and raise capital, whether it's grant capital or debt, occasionally equity. And so what we tend to see is we really want to prepare the companies. Firstly, we want to understand why they're not getting investment. And then we want to tailor our technical assistance or support to actually address those challenges. And so the challenges that investors typically point out are that companies don't understand their unit economics. So when they go to get a loan, they don't actually know whether on like a per unit or a product basis something is profitable, and to what extent that impacts the profitability or contributes to the profitability of the business overall. So any company, like if you're even just getting a grant and really early stage, even bringing a new product or an existing product into a new market, you should really try and understand the unit economics of each product that you sell, because that will put you in a good position when you're talking to investors. Good way of putting yourself into a position where maybe you could apply for debt, but even if you're applying for grants, being able to show that you have sort of these systems in place is really going to strengthen the case.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Davinia. And then if in just 1 minute, are you able to summarize some of the finance mechanisms that you've seen working really well for the clean cooking companies, understanding that the majority of them are, at the very early stages of development, both in terms of the technology and the company itself. But just in your expert opinion, what have you seen work really well in the sub-Saharan African space? Over to you.
Yeah, I think, it's really straightforward, really. Debt is only going to work if the company has an established track record, usually at least sort of like 2 years. So in this case, I think if you're an early stage company, you're testing a new technology, or you're testing a new sort of payment model, it has to be grant capital. And, you know, like equity, I think is way too expensive. And I think grants just need to really be very flexible and allow companies to test new products, to test products in new markets. If we really want to, you know, like get somewhere in terms of energy access, particularly for clean cooking, it's obviously really important that that is heavily subsidized. And I think, you know, I'll just touch on something like, you know, results-based financing. Results-based financing tends to be more geared towards companies that are quite mature. And I think we need, like, and there's a lot of talk about results-based financing. And I think if we really want to be inclusive, we actually need, you know, those sort of more lump sum grants that are upfront, that help companies to establish a pilot, you know, figure out what works, figure out their unit economics. And then once they're sort of in a position to scale, that's perhaps where you get, you know, more blended finance, where you'll get a bit of grant, a bit of debt, a bit of RBF, and maybe even carbon financing. And I think for companies to access carbon financing, they also need grants because the upfront costs of carbon financing are so high.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. You heard it here first, everyone, including some of the requirements that companies need to have in place and the support that they need to grow their businesses. Thank you so much, Davinia, for your invaluable inputs. Up next is Simba Mudimbu. I need to check if I'm correct. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, Simba, if I am pronouncing your name wrongly. Given that you're coming from the Clean Cooking Alliance, and we have all been testament to seeing how much the Clean Cooking Alliance is doing to really enhance the clean cooking sector, to really keep growing it through collaborations, through policy advocacy, and even through venture building. Can you provide us a little bit about how CCA has collaborated in financing, or, you know, has supported financing for the private sector, and what lessons you have drawn from your experience so far? Over to you, Simba.
Thank you, Mercy, and thanks for inviting me to speak. It's been a really interesting panel of discussion. Just conscious of time, so CCA has been in existence since about 2010, and a large part of the work that we've done in that time, in that intervening period, has been private sector focused from both sides. One side is actually helping to develop more enterprises in the clean cooking space, because we're like a single issue organization. We only exist for clean cooking. And then the other side is trying to make more pathways for private sector investment into the sector. So over time, what's happened is that there's been more of an emphasis on sustainable business models, profitability of companies, because the theory of change is that if you've got companies that are, you know, sustainable and can have sustainable business models over time, then you've got a longer period of impact, because there's less chance that those companies go under. So that's basically been the premise of the work that's been done with the private sector lens, and that's most of the work that I do at CCA. There's been a number of different programs and initiatives that I've run, and, you know, some of those are on the screen there. The Spark Plus, the Spark Fund initially, which was run around 2014, Catalytic Small Grant Funds, the Working Capital Fund. More recently, we've been running a Venture Catalyst program, which is a targeted technical assistance and grant program for the sector, really looking at giving tailored support to companies that are kind of late stage startups going into growth, to help them solve specific business issues, with the intention of being able to then show to the investment community and a wider set of investors that there is actually investable business models within the clean cooking sector. Perhaps more interesting than a review of the programs we've run is what we've learned, right? So I think some of that is on the board. The interventions that come into the sector have to match the maturity of the sector. So I mentioned before that there was a working capital fund that CCA partnered with Deutsche Bank to run. I think that fund only invested for about 2 years out of the length of time that it had been envisaged for. And that's primarily because it was a bit too early for the state of the sector at the time. It wasn't possible for debt funding. And I think Divini has mentioned some of that it wasn't possible for large number of transactions in debt funding at that time because of the state of the maturity of the sector. Fast forward to more recently, the Spark Plus Fund, which is run outside of the CCA, but CCA played a role in establishing, is now, I think they've just announced recently a close of that fund at about 60 odd million, 64 million, I think, US dollars. And that's a dedicated clean cooking debt fund that's done a number of really high profile and interesting transactions over the last couple of years that they've been investing. So it just goes to show that over the last 10 years, the maturity of the sector has improved greatly. And that's allowed the sector to crowd in more different types of funding. The other points of lessons is that I think grant funding and concessional capital are still very critical. We are in a sector where there is, I think, a dearth of equity, and I think other speakers have spoken about the expense of equity for smaller companies, and also because for many of the enterprises, they're starting from a place where the business cases for some of the technologies are not well proven. So grant funding and concessional capital are still very critical to allow companies to get going, establish products, fix the unit economics, fix their distribution models, and then allow them to be on a playing field where they can then go and look for other types of funding, whether that be debt or carbon money or other types of funding that can come in later. I think another critical issue is that what we've learned is that clean cooking it's a very contextual issue, right? So the solution has to be relevant and ideal for the customer wherever you are, and you have to speak to the customer's needs. So I think more and more we are convinced of the idea that user centricity has to be at the center of everything that happens in the clean cooking space. And that's reflected in some of the ways that we've developed our programs and iterated on the programs. Because there's a perspective on cooking depending on if it's urban versus rural, depending on the fuel availability in the context, the in-country macro context, cultural norms, all of those things come into play when you're talking about adoption of clean cooking and also then the sustained use. So user centricity, absolutely critical. But ultimately, I think when you're talking about private sector investment and private investors coming into a sector like clean cooking, with all its attendant technologies and different types of fuels, ultimately what matters is the business case that the company or the enterprise can present. So, and I think this has already been mentioned by previous speakers, that the unit economics have to be right. The entrepreneurs have to tell a good story about the scalability or the impact of their business. You have to understand the various issues around, whether it's around stacking and how households react to, or small businesses react to your solution. You have to have your business models right, and you have to have potentially iterated through many various ways of selling that product to the customer and getting the product to the customer at the right price and helping the customer pay for that product, whether it's through consumer financing or other partnerships with microfinance institutions, as already been mentioned. So all of that package of what the business looks like and how it presents itself is absolutely essential to the business case for the sector, so for the enterprise within the sector. I think you're on mute, Mercy. I can't hear you. I can see you talking with.
Apologies for that. Thank you. Just to say thank you so much for such an apt summary into some of the lessons that you've learned and what you have been doing in supporting the private sector in Sub-Saharan Africa to drive the clean cooking agenda. In 1 minute, are you able to summarize a little bit about the partnerships or collaborations that you have forged along the way with some of the examples that are here on this slide? I think these will be very important for people to know about what CCA is doing.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Mercy. So our programs have iterated, as I said. So where we are now, I think we've got 3 broad objectives that we're looking at in terms of private sector development. The first being that we're trying to play a role in unlocking and diversifying more funding for the sector. And the primary program that we're running in that space is the Financing Partnership Platform for Clean Cooking. which is basically trying to crowd in more investors into the sector, led by the carbon markets and the opportunity that the carbon markets present. So for example, we're talking to a lot of local financial institutions and conscientizing them about the carbon opportunity within clean cooking, giving them a lot of technical assistance for them to understand the clean cooking sector. And it's a collection of different sectors with different fuels, understanding all of that, and then also understanding the carbon markets and how they are structured and the potential route to a wider financing landscape through clean cooking in the carbon markets. So that's a very exciting initiative that we're running with at the moment, and trying to draw in more diverse investors, particularly local financial institutions, to play a role in funding, pre-financing carbon projects for people in the markets that we work in. The second is linked to what I just said about user centricity in the sector, and playing a bigger role in actually developing and designing solutions which are user-centric, and working with partners from academia and using the latest thinking and kind of design thinking and all of that to come up with solutions that are lasting and allow lasting transitions and lasting use of clean cooking solutions. And then I think the third aspect is demonstrating market viability. And we're running at the moment the first iteration of an innovation challenge facility, which is a digital innovation challenge, where we're trying to crowd in more technology players who are providing solutions around monitoring, evaluation, digital MRV into the clean cooking space, because our view of the clean cooking landscape in terms of enterprises has to be wider than just the businesses at the coalface, so to speak, providing solutions, but it's also like the carbon project developers, technology providers, etc., who are playing a role in developing the industry and making solutions accessible to all, because ultimately the goal is universal access. So yeah, that's in a nutshell three things that we're working on at the moment, and part of the iteration of enterprise development programming at CCA. I hope that was a minute, Mercy. Sorry if it was a bit.
It was. Thank you so much. It was a heavy minute. Thank you. And finally, with us here is Dr. John Leary, who has played a pivotal role in through the MEX program, and of course through GAMOS East Africa, in driving the e-cooking agenda in Kenya, which has culminated in some significant step changes at the national level as far as clean cooking, the clean cooking strategy is concerned, and crowding in the right stakeholders to continue building this market in Kenya. So Dr. John, my first question to you is, from your experience so far, what gaps do you see that still exist in developing the clean cooking market, specifically, especially for those low-income urban communities? Over to you, John.
Thank you, Mercy. And yeah, thank you to all the speakers that have gone before me for providing such a patchwork of challenges, but also solutions. It's been really inspiring to hear, and I'd like to just connect to a few of them as I go through the points below here, because I think many of these points have already been made, particularly looking back at the multi-fuel approach that was emphasized by Dr. Emmy, and the need to provide a variety of solutions to enable households, businesses, institutions to build a clean stack of solutions that can meet their diverse needs and give greater resilience and choice to consumers, and ultimately give a greater likelihood that they will move away from the more polluting solutions and towards the cleaner solutions. So I think for me, one of the biggest gaps within that context is overlooking electricity as a viable option for cooking needs in informal settlements. Improved cook stoves and LPG have long been promoted as solutions in these contexts. But it was great to see Dr. Emmy and several others mention electricity, and particularly modern energy efficient electric appliances as a viable opportunity for low income households. I think the big challenge is the high upfront cost of the devices themselves, but often that results in significant savings in the long term, especially looking at the cost comparison versus purchasing biomass fuels like charcoal in very small quantities, which often attract a premium price. So I think looking at cooking really in a different framing. So looking at cooking as perhaps a driver for broader reforms within the energy sector. So looking at cooking as a driver for the formalization of electricity connections. Many people in informal settlements already use electricity as part of their cooking fuel stack, but primarily with very low cost, very inefficient appliances, because if you're not paying for the fuel, then it doesn't matter how much of it you use. So are there ways that we can experiment through partnerships with utilities and with local electricity distribution entities to drive up demand and formalization of connections, so we can provide both better service for customers, safer use of electricity within the cooking fuel mix, and convert troublesome customers into good customers for utilities, which will then in turn encourage them to invest in the quality of supply in informal settlements, boost the reliability, and again make electricity an even more attractive option for cooking. So I really like Salou's point about the role of local champions in driving demand. And I think working in informal settlements is often very challenging, even for big entities like utilities and appliance distribution companies to work independently. It's essential to partner with local organizations, CBOs, NGOs, local entrepreneurs who really understand the local environment and can connect these bigger organizations into the local market. But going through these smaller partners, then there's a need to aggregate their demand and to provide working capital for them to be able to acquire appliances and be able to hold stock with which to be able to meet that growing demand. And it was great to see from Simba, from Andreas and Davina, the variety of financial instruments that are now available to try and unplug that gap and enable these smaller players to start growing their businesses and meet this demand in what is a very underserved market. So Dr. Emmy emphasized the need for digitalization of appliances, and this is a really exciting space right now, not just in electric, but also LPG, bioethanol, where we're starting to see not just the appliance itself, but also the supply chain being digitalized. So having that knowledge of where the fuel is going and where these appliances are ending up, being able to track the location of appliances, for example, that are sold in informal settlements can greatly reduce the credit risk, and being able to lock out the appliance if the customer isn't able to keep up with repayments can also help to increase repayment rates. And then finally, the second-hand appliance market, I think, is often very much overlooked. This is where many of the appliances that are currently in use in informal settlements actually come from. They're appliances that have developed fault and can be resold, repaired and resold at a much lower price. So particularly building capacity for repair and maintenance for these new types of energy efficient appliances, I think is a really important enabler going forward, and something we've now built into the electric cooking strategy here in Kenya, trying to integrate this into the curriculum for the Technical Training Institute so that we build capacity going forward to be able to carry out these kind of repairs and bring those appliances back to life. Back to you, Mercy.
Great, thank you. And thank you so much for highlighting some of those pertinent gaps. And I'm glad to see those patterns or these gaps are also being experienced by the clean cooking companies themselves. And of course, to close this session, we're asking the heaviest question to you, John, given all the work that you've done and the journey that you've gone through in Kenya. My final question to you is, what is the one thing you would like to see happen as far as investing in the clean cooking sector is concerned? Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it was great to hear about the many solutions that are available in terms of different financial instruments from the presenters who've gone before me. But I think the big thing that could really make a massive impact in this sector, which was, I think, alluded to by Engineer Herbert, is the leveraging of electricity sector funding. So, for example, pairing grid extension and grid densification, particularly in informal settlements, and the formalization of connections with demand stimulation through cooking. So this then gives access to a much greater variety of financial instruments, many of which are much larger in magnitude and structured in a very different way. So for example, accessing sovereign loans for appliance distribution, tagging on to connectivity programs component of demand stimulation that also supports the financial sustainability of that grid extension, at the same time as increasing the social and environmental impact of electricity access. I think a key enabler for that is also this new opportunities within the compliance market for carbon markets. So through trading international mitigation outcomes through the Article 6 framework for electricity as a cooking fuel. This is something that can be done by private sector entities, but is really where governments need to come in, and state utilities can play a critical role as distributors of, often in many countries, the largest distributor of clean cooking fuel, although they're often not seen that way. Here in Kenya, then, the utility connects over 75% of the population. So supplying clean cooking fuel into 3/4 of Kenyan households. And at the moment, it's charging cost-reflective pricing, but through using innovative mechanisms to bring down that cost, such as Article 6 trading on carbon markets, then it can widen that market, make it more accessible to a wider variety of market segments, and enable more people to cook more of their food with electricity. So let me leave it there, since we are quite over time, and let me pass back to you, Mercy.
Fantastic, thank you. And just to say thank you everyone for your patience so far. As you can see, it's been quite engaging, and I know that we're quite out of time. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them on the Q&A, and we will respond here, as well as share those directly with you, given that we're really significantly out of time. Just to say thank you again, Dr. John Larry, for your insights. And one of the things I'm getting from I've got from your speaking points are the need to break the silos, the need to collaborate, the need to rethink our approach to funding in the sector, and our approach to partnerships, and moving beyond just looking at this in a fragmented way, but strategically partnering even with the national utilities. Thank you so much for that, Dr. John Berry. Okay, so I just wanted to now finalize this webinar, and first of all, give a huge round of thanks to you participants for your patience throughout this webinar. I hope it has been as engaging and informative to you as it has to me. Thank you so much to our case study speakers, Sahid, Dr. Emmy, Engineer Herbert, and of course Mr. Salu, for all the work that you've done so far in ENACT, and the work that you continue to do on the ground in driving the clean cooking sector. I encourage you all to reach out to the service providers and our partners, and even get some bit of time to visit the communities to get to see the great work that they are doing on the ground. Thank you to the expert panelists for all your expert input, and sense checking our really our approach to what we're doing in the clean cooking space, and giving some very valuable insights into what else we can tap into as far as supporting the private companies is concerned. And finally, I want to thank the project team. Special thanks to Leonard, who has been a superstar in coordinating all this and coordinating all the speakers and everyone. Thank you, Jarita, Alessandra, and Ben from the communications team for really helping with promoting the work and making sure everything is running smoothly. And of course, Karine and Herb Sanchia as the project manager of ICLEI Africa, of ENACT, sorry. And maybe as we continue to advocate for increased financial flows into the clean cooking sector, let's not forget the hundreds of thousands of urban dwellers that risk being left behind if nothing is done. And as you have seen, projects such as ENACT have proven that there is an opportunity to scale clean cooking solutions, both as a viable business case for the private companies, but also as a climate action strategy for cities. So let's take this and keep the momentum going. Just to provide a bit of next steps, we have an upcoming event that is happening in Uganda. So Ben, if you could project that, please. So we have an upcoming event in Uganda, a multi-level governance dialogue workshop happening next week on the 26th of June. So if you are around, please join us and get to hear a little bit about what we're thinking from a policy perspective, what other stakeholders have the journey that they've gone through, and how we can try to break those silos as we move along the way. And of course, we will be shortly publishing some very key reports in the space that look at public sector financing, finance mechanisms for the private sector, as well as policy recommendations as within Uganda and Sierra Leone to keep driving the clean cooking agenda. We have also developed some very useful tools that both the public sector and private sector can use in planning and strategizing, as well as determining whether the solutions that we proposing, what they propose, are viable. And all these will be available on the website. And